Hello, I'm Lulu Creel, Senior Vice President and Chairman Latin American here at Sotheby's. And I'm delighted to welcome you to this special event, which is part of Artforum at Sotheby's, a partnership that brings audiences live conversations around the globe about contemporary art and its context. Today, Artforum at Sotheby's will explore the exhibition Normal Exceptions, Contemporary Art in Mexico, currently on view at the Museo Jumex in Mexico City. Normal Exceptions is a thematic survey of contemporary art in Mexico over the past 20 years, drawing primarily from the collection Jumex with additional works by invited artists and collaborators. The exhibition fills the entire museum with more than 20 works by artists based in Mexico, including those of international origins and Mexican artists living and working abroad. Artforum and Sotheby's are delighted to highlight the often overlooked exceptions of Mexican art that deserve to be placed in the spotlight. We're honored to have a panel of fantastic guests speaking today to explore the exhibition of contemporary art in Mexico. Eugenio López, the president of the Fundación Jumex and owner of Colección Jumex, Hammonds, chief curator of Museo Jumex, and two of the artists featured in the exhibition, Melanie Smith and García Torres. And now we shall see a short video from the inside the exhibition before handing over to the director of the Kunstinstituut Melly in Rotterdam, Sofía Hernández Chong, moderator of our event today.
I don't have a... Sophia's back.
¿Dónde veo el verde?
No sé qué pasó. ¿Listo?
Here, no?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sofía Hernández Chong, Director of Kunstinstituut Melly in Rotterdam. I'm joining you from the Netherlands this evening here. Today, we're spotlighting the exhibition Normal Exceptions, Contemporary Art in Mexico, on view at Museo Jumex until August 15th. The show proposes a dialogue between emerging and renowned artists who turn their attention to overlooked places, people, and narratives, challenging traditional conceptions of art and social history. Normal Exceptions is part of Museo Jumex's year-long series of exhibitions highlighting works from artists in Mexico in dialogue with the renowned collection Jumex, Colección Jumex, one of the leading collections of Mexican art and one of the most significant private collections of contemporary art in Latin America. To discuss the exhibition, as well as the development of Mexican contemporary art over the past 2 decades, I'm delighted to have with me 4 extraordinary speakers. Joining us from Paris, we have Eugenio López Alonso. Eugenio is a pioneer of contemporary art collecting in Mexico. In 2001, he created the Fundación Jumex Arte Contemporáneo, of which he is president. The creation of the Museo Jumex in 2013 has further established López's influence in the international cultural landscape. Welcome, Eugenio.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And joining us from Mexico City, we have Kit Hammonds, the chief curator of Museo Jumex, where he leads the artistic public programs. His major exhibitions at the museum have included Normal Exceptions, Contemporary in Mexico, which we will be discussing today, as well as James Turrell, Passages of Light from 2019, Scripted Reality, The Life and Art of Television of 2018, among other exhibitions. Hello, Kit.
Hi there.
Also in Mexico City, we have Melanie Smith. The artist Melanie was born in England in 1965. She lives and works between Mexico City and London. Her work is in diverse media, reflects on the extended field of painting within the history of art and its entanglement with the moving image. Her work is concerned with the relationships between the city, body, archaeology, tragicomedy, and nature. She has exhibited at numerous institutions, including Piers 1 and MoMA in New York, Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, Tate Britain, Tate Liverpool, and Tate Modern in London. And 2001, she represented Mexico at the 54th Venice Biennale. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have Mario García Torres, who's connecting from Bodrum in Turkey. Mario's artistic practice has explored time, truth, and history as concepts. He uses painting, video, sound, and performance as means of expression. Born in Monclova, in Coahuila, which is in the north of Mexico, he currently works between Los Angeles and Mexico City.
Yeah.
His work has been exhibited at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis, at the Contemporary Art Center of Brussels, the Tamayo Museum in Mexico City, and the Biennales of Berlin, Sao Paulo, and Venice, including Porto Alegre, among many others. Hello, Mario.
Hi there. Hi.
Well, thank you for all joining us from wherever you're connecting. I'm just going to explain a little bit about the formats tonight. This event will run for about an hour. Towards the end, we'll be taking your questions, which you can start submitting now. Underneath the video screen, you will see a web form where you can enter your name and your question. To submit your question, please enter your details and click submit. So that is it. We're going to begin this evening with a conversation. In fact, I wanted to ask Eugenio if we could start with him. Eugenio, the Colección Jumex, which you founded, is a phenomenal collection containing works by artists as Damien Hirst, Andy Warhol, Gabriel Orozco, and Marcel Duchamp. What prompted you to start collecting art?
Well, this comes from a long time ago. I liked art, and but not since I was when I was 14, 15, 16. Not in university. I wanted to be I never wanted to. I was terrible for mathematics, and when I went to choose what I wanted to study, I wanted to be a lawyer because there was no algebra and there was nothing to elevate to the square, and I was terrible for that. So basically, that's how I chose my education. Because I suffered so much in high school. Believe me, it was really bad. And I didn't finish, but I always knew that I was going to be in the company, in the family business. Mm-hmm. And I started on marketing and in the creative things. Little by little, I started... I met someone in Los Angeles, Stella Provas. Then I opened a gallery in Los Angeles, but it was more than being an art dealer. I wanted to be a collector because I discovered incredible artists, and my world started changing completely. And I owe so much to so many people who very generously museum directors, curators, because it was the first time in my life that I had passion for something, that I liked something very, very much. Of course, it was not that the business, the family business, I did not like it, but I started, the only way you can be good at something is when you love something. And I remember that I went to an auction at Sotheby for the first time, and I was at the very back, and I saw all the boards and all the people on the telephones and all the people sitting there, and coming out from 72nd Street all the way to 57th Street. I was thinking and thinking, and I said, this is serious, and I have to learn it. I have to learn why. And I started with, and that's how one question takes it to the other one. And people think that, oh, for him it was very easy. His family gave him the money. No. It was very difficult to convince a family who's never collected and to have the works of art. I loved the pieces of art. I was crazy about when I see something that I loved. There was nothing else that I wanted more than the piece of art, regardless of how much is it gonna be in 20 years. Of course, you have to be aware of the price, no? But this was 1994. But then I realized that I have to grow up with people of my own generation. And then I saw Saatchi's collection, and then I saw the Pond Foundation, and I saw Chase Manhattan Bank collection. And then I said, oh, in Latin America, there's never been a collection open to the public. That way I can buy the things I love, but it was for the love of the pieces. And I realized that there was not an international collection in Mexico, which is nothing wrong. But that was my goal, to do something international.
Thank you very much. That's a wonderful response about the importance of learning something that you're passionate about, and not just going with the flow, but identifying how that passion is directed. I love this, and we've been learning, everyone here in this roundtable conversation online, we've all been learning about contemporary art along the way with you. We're from pretty much the same or like the same generation. I want to now turn to Kit, because for sure the opening of Museo Jumex took a different twist from the wonderful exhibition space at the juice factory of Jumex before that in the city of Ecatepec, just in the outskirts of Mexico City. And maybe we turn to Kit and the chief curator of Museo Jumex, now an established institution with its own storage and registers and team that can not only collect, but also care for the collection and invite the public. So tell us first about the exhibition that you have on view right now. We really want to hear about that in specific. And just first of all, the name of the exhibition is very intriguing. Why is it called Normal Exceptions?
When we embarked on considering how to represent what is a very diverse and exciting period of art in Mexico, we were reluctant to write history of this moment, I suppose. And so we tried to think about how to consider history within the exhibition differently, and adopted this term normal exceptions from the discipline of microhistory, that looks at the lives of individuals and of particular events as a way to bring out the narrative of a particular time and moment. And so one of our ideas was to adopt this term, not strictly follow this historical model, but in order to place attention on the artist's work, and artists who themselves are investigating particularities in a way to reflect outwards the issues that we all face in this century, I suppose, the last 20 years.
For sure, and microhistory is such an interesting way to approach the exhibition, and also the importance of oral histories and project-based work, research-based artistic work. Great curatorial criteria. Now tell me, one of the important elements of the exhibition is that it just doesn't focus solely on artists of Mexican origin, but instead on artists working in Mexico, and includes also some foreign-born artists that for whom Mexico is a large part of their practice, an important part of their practice. It includes as well Mexican artists who are living abroad and working there and not in the country. So how did you choose to define Mexican art when beginning the process of forming such exhibition? And how did this choices influence the artists that you chose to feature?
Well, I think we chose to feature around these kind of thematic approach or process-based practices that would be able to encompass a broad variety of activities. There's work, painting, photography, installation, action-based work. And yeah, a decision we made as well, as the title suggests, contemporary art in Mexico, was a way to sort of broaden this discourse and reflect a time that in reality, what might be seen as Mexican art practices have become very internationalized and opened up. And a greater deal of attention is being placed on Mexico as a place to come and to live and work a cosmopolitanism has emerged here, which seemed important to reflect within the exhibition. And actually the history of art in the last 20 years, we have Melanie here, for instance, more than 20 years in Mexico, has always had that cosmopolitan thread. So we were interested in focusing on that rather than defining necessarily what Mexican art could be.
Well, that's something to explore as well, the term cosmopolitanism and its relationship to art history, how it's been read as a term across time. But look, let's go to the exhibition. You've chosen a selection of artists from the exhibition to discuss here with us this evening. And I would like to see if you could tell us about them as we see their work on the screen.
Sure, I just wanted to highlight a particular thread in relationship to the thematic of how we explore history and how things are registered in history. This first work we're seeing is by Jorge Sartori. Just as a preface as well, the exhibition included a number of rotating rooms, so it wasn't purely a static exhibition. And we'll see some of those projects that were part of the show within this. And Jorge's was one example. In this project, Los Negros, Jorge directly analyzed microhistory, returned to the site of the first microhistorical book by Carlos Ginzburg, met the author, and in this image you see the artist meeting the author, drawn by a court illustrator for legal trials, that again related to this history. And what Jorge was interested in was identifying visual or material elements that actually fall outside even microhistorical study, because they're not written down. So one focus was to look at the materials, such as the following image, which shows a number of brick sculptures derived from motifs in the town of in Italy, where this original book was based. And a further artist was Raúl Ortega, who, as you mentioned, is Mexican, however, lives in New Zealand. And this project, which is a video work shown for the first time here, is a phonoarchaeology, where Raúl entered into an area of Montserrat that had been covered by a volcanic eruption, and particularly a sound recording studio, and was recouping the sound from lost records, LPs and tapes, which form the soundtrack to this video portrait. this idea of archaeology as being one means of uncovering the lives of individuals was a kind of a leitmotif among the selection of works. And sometimes that was enacted by artists such as G.T. Polizzi, who I think we'll see in the next image. And in some ways, Terce un Quinto, the image at the top, where removal and excavation are an action to inscribe things into history. We'd normally think of an inscription as an addition. In this case, a removal begins to inscribe things into history. And G.T. Polizzi's work, it's actually directly related to the history of the museum. It was made for the exhibition, and the shape cut out of the gallery walls is the silhouette of all the works that are ever been hung in that place within the museum. So it has an overlay of Franz Erhard Walter, John Baldassari, Laura Calzadilla, that make up this outside form. Another part of the exhibition, on our first floor, we've been producing a series of projects that invited not artists but organizations to participate in the show. In this case, the first project was with Soma, which is an independent artist-founded art school, who produced a series of collective workshops and research into the area around the museum, using the gallery space as both a meeting place and a print room. And they produced at the end of that project a risograph book, collectively authored, that tells something of the personal experience of the area, the new development in which Jumex sits. And finally, as to talk a little bit more about how history might be explored in a different way through artistic means, this current project by Insight, an organization that was founded on the border of San Diego and Tijuana, commissioning artwork, used the space for a performance based on their own archives. The script is written from quotation from artists and critics who are discussing public space, and it's performed daily by two dancers who respond to the script through movement. So in addition to the, if you like, static exhibition, we've tried to incorporate an ongoing dialogue with how artistic research might contribute towards this idea of reflecting on the moment, both artistic moment and cultural and historical.
Fantastic. You've presented at least beautiful artworks, but also these two wonderful organizations, Soma and Insight, of which I'm a dear fan. And now Melanie, who's with us, as well as Mario, are two of the artists featured in the exhibition at Museo Jumex. Why don't we begin with Melanie and, I don't know, hear a little bit about her work in the exhibition, Parres Zero, which is in Museo Jumex now on display. Tell us, Melanie, how is this work connected to the ideas of space and urban life and into Mexico in particular?
Well, actually, Parres is a place which is just outside Mexico City. It's just on the periphery between Cuernavaca and Mexico City. And it's a really sort of small settlement where very few people are about during the day. You know, it's a very kind of abandoned place where there's a lot of houses, as there are many small towns over Mexico where people, you know, are the kind of their own architects of the houses. Doesn't really kind of have a center. It's a bit sprawling. And the video which you see in the left-hand corner is it's really like a sort of 16mm animation as a kind of portrait of the place itself. And then there's this wall, a kind of concrete wall, like many of the concrete walls which you find in these towns, and behind it there's this painting, which is a kind of also another kind of portrait of Paris. So I was thinking, as it's really kind of present in a lot of my works, about my own relationship to abstraction and how that really changed when I went to Mexico. Previously I'd been really interested in minimalism. So I was kind of thinking of this wall almost like, or spatially, kind of like the monochrome, or a monochrome that, which is actually blocking, in this case, the view of the painting behind. And the monochrome for me, in sort of westernized terms, is a kind of a window through which you look onto something, through, sort of looking onto nature, or looking onto spiritualism. And in this case, it's you're denied that view. So you always have to kind of look around the back of things. And this is a lot of what my work's about, is kind of, challenging these different histories of art,
That's a very good introduction to the work, and I think also to your practice, which really involves from painting and film. And I really want you to talk about your work called Schilitzla Dismantled. Yeah. And this is a work that has traveled all over the world, and that actually I got to see in different places, including here in Rotterdam at the Boijmans Museum. Can you please open us up to this beautiful work of yours, which is, complex and also...
Yeah. I mean, I think this one kind of, it describes again my interest in the pictorial plane, which you hear quite easily with this is a mirror which gets carried through the garden, which is a garden built by Edward James, who was a patron of the arts, very much associated with the Dadaists and Surrealists. And he came to Mexico and built these gardens from over 20 years, from 1960s, 1980s. And he built these sort of onirical structures, stairways, which kind of led to nowhere. They're all out of cement. Here you can see one in this slide. And he used the whole town he employed the whole town to make these structures. And they're very much, thinking about sort of emotional architecture. And I think the interesting thing for me in the project was that he was thinking that these structures over time would be reclaimed by nature. So I was really interested in this sort of entropic sense of nature crumbling back into or the structures crumbling back into nature. So my film really is a kind of a very fragmented or dismantled vision, which comes from a sort of constellated, many different references throughout the history of art, and has, as I say, this mirror as its sort of central protagonist, where the mirror is kind of reflecting back the landscape itself. So I was really thinking in terms of kind of critiquing this sort of the idea of the exotic landscape, why James came in the first place to set up this place way away from the center and virtually for himself. So there's many kind of dismantled and fragmented stories that come into play in the video.
Yes, it's really a beautiful film. And Edward James, having come to Mexico and you having investigated him, is a part of the research practice also that is shared between you and Mario very beautifully, that you go on to really write and or rewrite the histories of these places and artists that are hidden somewhere or that haven't been fully revised, and to really think about it self-reflectively, not only through the mirror, but also through thinking of the medium of art, which brings me to asking Mario about his work in the exhibition at Museo Jumex now. Your work is The Painting is Missing, The Painting Has Been Found, and it's an artwork that is concerned with the art worlds, and it considers a notion of what types of art are actually valued and which aren't through society and by its institutions. Can you explain a little bit about the process behind this creation? We're going to see some of the images of this artwork as an installation. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Sorry. This piece is a piece I made in 2008, I think. So it's a little bit slightly early work, I'd say. It was done, I don't know, like 15 years ago. And it started, how to explain this? I mean, I think that I should give a little bit of a context. I think that from the think I belong to a generation of people we grew when conceptual art started to be analyzed and reviewed, and finally it was a moment that those ideas from the 60s and late 60s and 70s started to be distributed, and we as a world really understood the scope of those ideas. And I think that, so I grew up thinking about this and being very influenced by that. And one thing that really, through reading and through understanding that those kind of positions in the art world, I got to understand and to be a passionate fan, a fanatic. I'm an artist, but I'm also a fanatic about art. And that led me to precisely to what Kit was saying before, to the minor histories, to the tiny little details in our history, and mainly in the conceptual art history. So I was, at the time, during those years, I was really trying to research and trying to investigate out of without the intention of making works. It was mainly about trying to investigate and to understand what was happening in tiny little moments. So every time that there was a line in a book that said something funny and that wasn't developed, I was, calling people and writing people and trying to understand this whole thing. And at some point throughout this research, I started to understand that there was these gaps in history. And so I spent a number of years sort of looking at those gaps and trying to think about them and sort of reviewing them in some other works. That one of them we might see later, I think. But in that moment of looking at the gaps, I understood that Ed Ruscha, which was an artist that I really appreciated, and at some point in his career, they started to make a catalogue raisonné of his work. Mm-hmm. And through that process, they published, or I realized myself that there were some works that he had done, they didn't know, or he didn't know, his studio didn't know where they were. So I was really intrigued about this, like what happens, what happens with works when we lost a work of art? What is that? Does that work exist? What does it mean? Does the work still exist? Or this kind of, it brought me to like funny little questions, which were very conceptual questions about the art world and fundamental questions about art. And so I started to think, okay, maybe I should recreate this and create the ghost of those works that were lost. Maybe they're not destroyed, maybe they're somewhere, but just we don't know where they are. And so I got to this idea to recreate the paintings. So I created the size, each of the paintings that were lost, I recreated in a canvas. I didn't repaint the painting as Ed Ruscha had done, but I just put the title on it. So what we're looking at is just white canvases that have been painted white, and they only have the title of the work that had been lost. But when I started doing this, and I think maybe Kit can tell us how many they are. I forgot now, but it's, I don't know, like 30 something works that were lost. But I started painting these things, and at some point during the process, I realized that they actually had found some, and so I had to split up and make two works out of one, and so now it's two works, and some of them, one group is the title of the work is this painting is missing, and the other group is called this painting has been found. So every time that a new work is found, it moves from one group to the other. So that's how that piece came about.
That is something that is funny if you're not working in the insurance companies or as registrars in museums, of course. But I do think that it does stem not only from Ed Ruscha, but for sure from the very basic propositions of solid and conceptualism, that the artist is a mystic, and that does not, he or she, they do not provide information, or they art to provide information, but not to instruct, say, its audience. And I think that those are essential aspects of your work. And it's not just about the art object or artists that you are investigating through microhistories, as Kit has said, but you also study artistic practice in large, conceptualism being one type or modality of work. where the speech act actually is quite important wherever it is had. So a major theme is this, the questioning of artistic practice in itself, and you employ both modern and contemporary art history to not only review, but as an actual resources to establish a relationship between the past, the present, and also possible futures. To this end, you often reenact some of the other artists' work or draw on archival footage as the primary source of material for your own work. And we have a short excerpt here of one of your works, Falling Together in Time. Here it is. I want us to watch it for a bit and then ask you a question or two, Mario, about this work.
Sure.
Girl, you really got me now. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Girl, you really got me now. You got me so I can't sleep at night.
Life is very much linked to coincidences. One could argue life is made of them. You just really have to be aware in order to recognize them. Sometimes, though, I think it might be connected to liminal moments. Awareness, I mean. When things are about to happen, time slows down and synchronicity becomes visible.
So we have seen just a very small bit of Falling Together in Time. Mario, tell us a bit of what you wish to convey to the audience through this film.
Oh well, I wish we could see it all because it's hard to explain.
Put it on YouTube, compadre. Just put it there.
Yeah, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can. Maybe I don't know if I can because of
copyright.
Copyright issues. But it's a video that it's made out of YouTube videos. It's a more recent work. It's a work I made maybe a couple of years ago. And it's an essay made out of, so as the same as you were talking about in terms of researching and reenacting works of art, I've also sort of considered many other sort of cultural productions as part of that same research. And one case has been sort of leveling out cultural production in terms of like not looking differently at pop culture, for example. Music and things like that, or literature or theater or whatever. And in this case, it's a video that I started to build because I wanted to talk about liminal moments, what it means to be in a liminal moment. I think I was in one, and I was trying to understand that, what it means to change your life in some radical way. And I started to look into that, and I realized that I could do an essay or an idea and explain an idea that was less about liminal moments and it was more about coincidences. I realized that there was a number of people who had been through liminal moments, and in those liminal moments, there was a number of connections through them. So that's why I think it's really difficult to explain, because it's a video that connects crazy facts, crazy stories. Like the main issue in the video is a song written by the group Van Halen, American group Van Halen. And the song is called Jump. And it turns out that Jump was, it connects Jump with the last fight of Muhammad Ali. And it connects Jump with the creation of a synthesizer that then was later used by Madonna. And it draws a number of information that leads to the fact that to understand why a song like that was created, what information brought the band to publish this song, which was about a liminal moment, or people believed that it was about jumping, about killing yourself, and what it meant. So it's a very complex video. I don't know, maybe I'm not doing a good job.
I think you are, and I think that it connects very well to the idea of gap that you investigate in art history, and also to the jumps or the leaps of faith that art and culture at large have manifested into passionately taking up on a role, whether it's collecting or making art or investigating an idea. And I think that we do many jumps when we also immerse ourselves into a new context. And this is where I think the presentation or participation of Melanie and you in the exhibition at Museo Jumex is quite relevant to speak about today. Neither of you, Melanie or Mario, neither of you are from Mexico City and have lived and worked there, or here, I should say, but I'm not there either. How has Mexico City influenced your artistic practice? Because I think that that really is a jump from where you're coming from to come to that urban jungle of sorts. Melanie, why don't we start with you? And you know, as a British artist coming or entering into the Mexican art scene a couple of decades back, how has this country impacted your work?
Oh, I mean, hugely, without doubt. You know, as I was saying earlier, I was really, I suppose my art education was all about abstraction, minimalism. And so when I came to Mexico, you know, that sort of idea really got turned on its head, sort of like 180 degrees. And yeah. I was really kind of fascinated, I think, with the Baroque, just, you know, that kind of the way of just how things are presented in Mexico City. You know, that kind of Baroque overflowing modernity, which has always kind of been present, I think, over the last few years in my work. And I think another big factor, which kind of, you know, came into playing over the years, was this idea of working with distance. You know, if you look at my work, there's a lot of helicopter shots. There's a lot of distances from above. There's a lot of distances, you know, from Fordlandia, from Maria Elena, which are two videos I've been working on recently. So there's a lot to do with the idea of distance. And I think this, and the latest project, which I did actually before the pandemic, was filmed in two places, again, all about distance. And it was a reenactment of William Blake's The Circle of the Lustful. And the performers were in Amuac, and I was directing from the Museo Amparo. So it's a kind of this idea about, you know, giving back, kind of, you know, giving over directorship a bit, looking at things from afar. And I think one of the things that Blake really is really good at telling us is this, you know, he's really sucks us into somehow into the idea of the human condition and pain and anguish and urban paranoia, you know. So I was looking really with this project at how his illustration somehow defamiliarizes itself in different cultural contexts. So, you know, Blake for us is huge in our imaginary, and that memory of the painting is also really huge for British people. So in this case, I was looking at with CCTV cameras, like who were kind of filmed from afar, and seeing how the virtual space, the performative space, kind of meshed together with the painterly space. So I think we can see a little bit of the clip from how this is actually an edited clip. Afterwards, this became a film. So how these bodies were making, again, these sort of very fragmented but Baroque kind of juxtapositions of each other.
That's a very beautiful connection of an artist in the UK, William Blake, who not only does it allow you to speak about vortex and the importance of distance, but also for sure the experience of COVID-19 and the distance that we all had to take. And you know, William Blake's galleries at the Tate, Britain being very important when the country was reopening in the UK.
Yeah. When who was to know what was coming around the corner, you know?
Yeah.
The closeness of all those bodies, which is, you know, difficult to find these days.
Yeah, and I do think that Vortex connects also to your photographs of the late 90s of Mexico City shot in helicopter, and for sure it's to this crazy experience that one can have in Mexico City. And now, what about you, Mario? You were born in Monclova. We've already said that Monclova is located way up north in Mexico, in the desert, in the state of Coahuila, and really different from the urban jungle that is Mexico City. How has living there affected your work?
You mean living in Monclova?
No, in Mexico City. This program is about the Mexico City.
Oh, okay.
We'll talk about Monclova over beer some other day.
Well, that's a pity. Well, I mean, it's funny that Melanie talks about distance, because I think that's been a very important thing also that I have been dealing with. I think first of all, before going to Mexico City, it was very clear to me that I had to go to that place, right? Like in Mexico City, the infrastructure in Mexico really leads to very few points in the country where one can actually develop a practice, to be in touch with the art world, which I think is one of the main. So I always saw that as a distance that made me do a number of works or provoke a number of works. But leaving it, so I've been in Mexico City I've had two different lives, I think, in Mexico City. I lived there for a number of years, and then I left to Los Angeles for a number of years, and now I'm back. So I think I have to make the distinction, because I think those two moments had a very different influence in my work in that sense. I think when I came first in my first trip, it was very rewarding to find a number of artists who were doing and thinking in the same way, people who were also invested in conceptual art ideas. So I found a number of artists who were there, and I could talk about them. And so that was really rewarding and very kind of homecoming. So that really created some kind of comfort for me to develop those kind of ideas. So that was really interesting. But that same thing made me leave as well, because by the time that Mexico City started to be kind of hype in the art world, and people will come to Mexico to find what they thought Mexican art was, I was not fulfilling that. So I was like, okay, I gotta get out of this place. So I left on a Jumex grant to study in LA, and I developed. I mean, I think that many things mature in my work when I was in LA, and I started to show more often. But I think that one thing that really is becoming a very important part of my work is now that when I was in LA, I realized that I was very lonely in terms of art. I think that there is some works of mine that you can tell that thinking wise, it was a very lonely practice. And at some point I realized that it was part of the reasons why we moved back to Mexico. And we moved back to Mexico because I thought, and I think that is really interesting, and I think it's important feature of Mexico, which is that our works and ideas are discussed and are produced in the street. You go to a party, you go to a gathering, you bump into people, and you share your ideas, and those ideas get built with other people, and they connect you to other people. So my work since then has been growing exponentially in terms of collaborations, and I've also understood that my work is not a one people dictation, but it's more like a platform for things to happen. So I was very clear that Mexico City would allow me to do that, and to question myself, question my own work, question my own resolutions. How do I explain this problem? How do I resolve this? And I don't want to do it by myself. I want to know more people and involve all these subjectivities, involve them in the work. So I think that's been very important as well.
I think that it's actually quite an interesting comment, and I would say that very much of that community was built pretty much in the 90s, although reflected by you just after you returned from LA, and in any case, connecting also the artistic community that Melanie was able to be part of and help shape during the 90s. That was quite relevant, I would say, in terms of the expansion of art through installation and performance and film and a multidisciplinary practice. But I actually want to go back to hear you speak about one work in particular, Mario, which is Open Letter to Dr. Attel, which I love. And this is a work that reflects that solitude that you're speaking about right now of being in LA. It's an artwork that you made about Mexico while being in Los Angeles. And it's a very important work in your practice for a number of reasons. And taking further on epistolary, voiceover, and for sure, the institutional transformation of the artistic community and infrastructure for culture in Mexico is pretty much captured in this film, both through modern art in Mexico and contemporary art and its institutions. So can you speak a little bit about this work, which we're looking at right now in slides, and just tell us a little bit about how it raises some of the questions of history or so-called truth that you have explored in your work? Because for sure, I definitely want to get back to not so much the art world, but the community that forms the collaborations and the spirit of Mexico's hospitality culture at large. But let's just hear you speak of Dr. Attel and the open letter to him as one of your key artworks.
Yeah, well, that's a piece that I made, as you said. Well, living in Los Angeles, at the time it was a piece that I made with a lot of urgency. It was a piece that was meant to resolve a very specific problem, and that problem was that it seemed that the plans to establish a Guggenheim Museum in Mexico were getting very serious. And I was at some point I had at the beginning I thought it would be interesting to create a little documentary about a museum that didn't exist yet. And with that idea, I flew to Guadalajara, where the museum was going to be established, and with the knowledge and the ideas and the interviews of architects and the people who were involved. And while being in Los Angeles, I was aware that I didn't think that was a good idea, and which we could talk for a long time, but it would have taken the whole budget that the country spends in culture. It would have taken just to maintain this museum. So I was like, no, this shouldn't happen. So I went down to Guadalajara and tried to talk to my colleagues there, friends and artist friends, but I realized that nobody shared my ideas. Like, they were all happy. So I shot a little bit of film in the landscape, the background of the museum, what the museum was going to be set up. At some point, the director of the Guggenheim Museum had talked about this, how the landscaping in Jalisco, in Guadalajara, was going to be a postcard for the Guggenheim. So I was really invested in what that meant, how that landscape was going to be used in a different way. Oh, this is interesting. So I questioned myself, who have used this landscaping for what purposes, with what ideas. And so I went back to Los Angeles with a roll of film of the landscape and thinking, like, make the piece. So I had no source to write a letter to a colleague, an artist that had died before, but who had painted that landscape. So I wrote a letter to him explaining, Dr. Attel, explaining what was happening, and I just placed the letter in the form of subtitles on top of the footage, and that's it. That's what it is.
Well,
it's a piece that it's interesting, I think, because it's a piece that was done with a very specific urgency to be shown to my friends in Guadalajara and say, listen, let's discuss this. And but it's also a piece, as you said, it's been an important piece in my work that has been traveling a lot. So it's been really interesting to sort of create that connection on how a very specific urgency in Mexico sort of became an echo in different parts of the world.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think that part of it also has to do with unearthing an artist himself, that is who the letter is addressed to, open letter, that was, an artist, a landscape painter, a volcano expert, a lover of modern art, meaning he's an emblematic figure that was positioned to also understand gentrification. And as Mexico has developed, no Guggenheim in sight, certainly Museo Jumex, very well positioned. I want to come back to Eugenio and ask him a question. He's been following the Mexican art scene for so many years. And now with the museum has been, you've been very much connected to also public reception of your collection. and through the grants program of the foundation, Fundación Jumex, also getting a sense of what the ideas are of artists and curators. So Eugenio, how do you see the future of Mexican art? Having wonderfully spoken Mario and Melanie here with us, tell us about you. I mean, I think that the future for sure is of all these artists that are intellectuals and very, amazing craftsmen and creative people. But tell me, what are your views of the future of Mexican art?
More than Mexican art, I see it as a Latin American art.
Okay.
Mexico, when you put boundaries in European art, American art, Asian art, that's something that I don't like, but Latin American art. And there has been so many things that I have learned throughout the years, in the past 12 years, about minimal art from Brazil, from Colombia, from Venezuela, from so many artists that I was only aware about European artists, American artists, Donald Judd and Flavin, this, and there has been so many important artists. How do I see the future? That is it all depends on how galleries, museums, curators look at it. I don't think it's discrimination towards that. It was just something that they were not aware, or they were aware, but now it's changing. And 25 years ago, 1995, my God, it was completely a different era of Mexican art. Mexican artists, they came a long period, but if you see the artists from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, nothing happened to them. What do I mean by happen? No, I'm not talking about price-wise. No. I'm talking about exhibitions. To be in museums outside of Mexico. The people to be aware of, as an artist, I think that the most important thing is recognition is incredible, but at least to be aware that what is going on. And there's incredible artists in any field, like actors or actresses, that sometimes they do it big time, and there's so much talent in Latin America.
Yeah.
There's so much talent in, I suppose, China, which I have not been, and I have to go, because among 1.8 billion people, there has to be talent. There's been in India. It is just a matter of how curators, institutions, collectors, and their own peers approach them.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because I do feel that art in Mexico and artists are incredibly intelligent and no less very much connected to the history of Latin American art at large. It's a region of much creativity and struggle, and it is an ecosystem that is needed, or it takes a village, right, to really support and give them the platforms and the support that they need for the public to encounter their work and to rethink the importance of art for the advancement of culture. And I can't wait to go back to Mexico and see some artists. So I'm going to ask Kit now to see if there are any artists in Mexico that you're excited about right now, that you're working with, or art scenes that you are interested in visiting, art communities that you want to connect with within Mexico, and perhaps even connected in Mexico, but maybe they're even from abroad. Some recommendations, some tips.
Kid, be
What
careful, kid, be careful, be careful, be careful. It's gonna, because we're gonna leave people out of the list.
No, I can mention some of the artists who are actually in the exhibition, because one of the things we deliberately looked for was to move outside of just focusing on Mexico City, because increasingly I think people are choosing to live in other regions and have very different connections. There's a younger artist in the exhibition, Julieta Aguinalco, who's based in Baja California. Lorena Ancona, who made a really fantastic work for us, who's based in the Yucatan. And interestingly, there seems to be a move to, with these artists, to not necessarily focus their attention through Mexico City, but build connections elsewhere. So, yeah, I think it's quite vital at the moment to look beyond Mexico City, even beyond the major cities such as Guadalajara and Monterrey, to other regions. Sonora has an artistic community that really has connections beyond the border.
Sofía, can I say something else?
Yeah.
It is so important how many international artists have come to live in Mexico City. Here we have our Melanie Smith. Kid is here. And these are international people, which before, and there's so many young artists that they say Mexico City is the most energetic city in the world right now. And they're moving to Mexico City, and they loved it. The fact to have English artists from Belgium, from Holland, from Thailand, from anywhere, and that they creating their work in Mexico, in their studios, and there's so many galleries representing them, and gambling, because it's a gamble, not gambling. What I'm trying to say is, when you take an artist and then you present them to everything is important, and there's the younger generations, they want to live in Mexico, or they come and they spend time. And that is fantastic. It is something that I've not seen in 20 years. In the past 3-4 years, everything has helped. Galleries, Sonamaco, maybe Museo Jumex, maybe curators, but the eyes of the outside world are coming to Mexico.
I think that it's very noted what you're saying, and I think that it does have to do with the experience of Melanie that has been socialized for many of us that have grown up in Mexico, and also the experience of Mario that is very much about building through community and with community the work. It's a very collaborative society, and it's very community oriented in general, and artists are an emblematic aspect of this. So artists from abroad who feel lonely, or from the interior of the country. I think the nice example that Kid is also bringing is that it's not just about Mexico City, but also artists are choosing to live in their own states, and we need more support for El Interior, so that artists can help build their communities of thought. Now, we have a couple of questions from the audience, and our time really is running out. We have a couple of minutes, but there's one question that is, that has been raised by the public for all of us, and for you specifically as participants, but it's actually a question that I would like to hear first the artist's response to. Maybe we begin with Melanie. And it's a question on the way an audience member would like to see or hear from your thoughts on the way in which the history of 20th century politics in Mexico has played out in the work being made now. Now, note, it's not about 21st century politics, 20th century politics, which I think is very important. So let's not talk about the 21st century, but in what way the history of 20th century politics impacted artistic production today. And I think that it's quite relevant because Eugenio has spoken about the importance of the 90s, but we also have that it's a century of a lot of dictatorships coming down in Latin America, and certainly the revolution in our country at the start of the 20th century play a fundamental role in artist practice and making at the latter part of the the turn of the 21st century. So Melanie, what are your thoughts? How has politics played a role, or the history of politics played a role in your work?
Well, I mean, I think you were kind of edging towards the Aztec Stadium, but because that, that for me, which was kind of a piece which was done within the context of the 2010 so-called bicentenary celebrations, which I was somehow kind of been connecting. It was a massive piece which I made in the Aztec Stadium with 3,000 people, with using the red square of Malevich in the middle. So using people as a to kind of form this red square. So I was kind of, yes, I've definitely been thinking a lot about how different histories, different modernities connect with Mexican modernity. I quite often use, like specific sites, in that case, the Aztec Stadium, which was made by Pedro Ramirez Vázquez as a, center of power, political power, in the first part of the second part of the 20th century. Then I've got really involved with dissecting Diego Rivera, which is a pretty dangerous thing to do, but I've been kind of critiquing his murals in, dare I say it, in a way, a sort of feminist way, by just kind of really fragmenting this kind of very powerful sense of Diego Rivera's playing out of the Mexican Revolution. It comes through my work, I suppose, more through art history, but obviously those two things are totally connected through politics and art history going hand in hand.
Yeah. Mario, do you want to speak to this question from the public?
Oh, well, that seems like, we could talk hours about the influence of politics in art, for sure. I would say that there's the history, when you look at the history of Mexican art, or the art that has been produced in Mexico, have been, I think, defined always, if it might be more relevant to talk about this, about the distance between, or the relationship, the political relationship of Mexico with other countries. So, like when you look at the art from the early century, like 1910s, 1920s, it was a work that was very much connected to European modernism and with what was happening at the same time in Venezuela or in Argentina, and it was a very clear international discussion. And then we had this gap of the muralists who, because of politics, they needed to define what our identity was, which you might be in agreement or not, but we had this gap of radical revolutionary art, and by the time of the 50s, 60s, slowly the other ideas that were caught up in the 20s came up again, and where we started again to be connected to the world in that sense. So I think that we could talk forever, but I think that that to me is very interesting, the relationship between the exterior politics and how that has been influenced.
I think that it's quite interesting. In preparation for this program, Kit and I were discussing the exhibition at PS1, of which Melanie Smith's work is actually the cover of the exhibition catalog, an exhibition 20 years ago, curated by Klaus Biesenbach and with contributions from Patricia Martin, the then curator of Fundación Jumex, and a major voice in defining what the collection would be, and Cuauhtémoc Medina. So just to even think of the idea of finding these three people collaborating again is daunting. But what is incredible is that these three people with great minds were able to articulate the moment of the political context of Mexico at that time, saying that an exhibition of that kind had not taken place in New York since the Tamayo retrospective at the Metropolitan had occurred as part of the also independence anniversary of I don't know how many years. And so it was framed already as an exhibition, very much like the one of Kit, about a kind of other narratives that are not the institutional narratives that are taking place regardless of the presence or infrastructure of the state. And in that way, defining itself in the artistic community in contraposition to the official discourse of the political history that had been promoted for a large part of the 20th century. So I think that it's a very pertinent question from the audience that has come in. And and I am, there's more questions, and those are to Eugenio about his collecting practice in the future of Museo Jumex that could be responded by Kit via email or phone calls maybe, and by Eugenio in a coffee or two. I think that this has been a wonderful evening already when Kit has introduced us to the exhibition at Museo Jumex. Eugenio has introduced us to his startup of thinking through the arts and falling into passion.
And to Patricia Martin. Patricia Martin was a key person. Key was someone incredible. And it is something that you will always remember, the people. And smart, incredible curator, incredible. And Keith, whom I have here. and all of you.
You've had wonderful curators, Kit now, Julieta Gonzalez, Magali Arreola, Patrick Charpenel, Patricia Martin, and we have two wonderful artists, Melanie Smith and Mario Garcia Torres, to thank for these wonderful presentations about their artistic practice and the distance and proximity that you have with Mexico. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. To the public in this part of the world that is up late, and to those spending the afternoon with us online on Zoom, I'm very, very pleased to listen to you all, and hopefully there will be another occasion to gather and talk politics.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao, everybody.
Nos tenemos que quedar, chicos, nos tenemos que quedar.